Here's a riddle for you. What's black and white and red all over? A sunburnt Pangoro. Okay, that riddle was pretty bad. But there are some riddles that are genuinely pretty mind-twisting, so I thought I'd share some with you. Now here's how the video is going to work. I'm going to be presenting a total of 3 riddles, one riddle at a time, and at the end of each riddle, I'll give you some time to pause the video to try and work out the riddle for yourself, unless obviously you've already know what the answer to the riddle is. But hopefully not all of them. So let's begin. Riddle number 1. You as a brand new trainer are on your Pokémon journey. While making your way to the next town, you come across 2 different cave entrances. One cave leads to the next town, whereas the other cave will lead to a Team Rocket hideout, where you'll have all your belongings, including your Pokémon, stolen. There's no other way to get to the next town, and there's no way to tell which cave leads to which location. But before you try your luck and pick a cave, you see 2 Slowking at the side. The Slowking see you approaching, and tell you that they know which cave leads to the next town. However, you may only ask one Slowking a single yes or no question, and to make things harder, one of the Slowking always answers by telling the truth, whereas the other Slowking always answers by telling a lie, and you don't know which one tells the truth and which one lies. Given this information, how can you figure out which Slowking is the liar, and more importantly, which cave will lead to the next town? This riddle is actually pretty well known, and has even been featured in cartoons such as the original Powerpuff Girls. So in this situation, you obviously don't know which cave leads to the next town, and which Slowking is the liar. However, both the Slowkings do know which cave leads where, and if the other Slowking is a liar or not. So because each Slowking knows how the other Slowking would answer a question, you should ask one of the Slowking, if I asked the other Slowking whether the cave on the left led to the next town, would they say yes? If their answer is yes, then you should go through the other cave. If their answer is no, then you should go down the left cave. So let's explain how this works. If the left cave does indeed lead to the next town, and you asked each Slowking if the left cave is correct, they'd say yes and no respectively. Both Slowking know this, so the truth Slowking would say that the liar would say no to the question, which is the truth, and the lying Slowking would say that the other Slowking would say no, which is of course a lie. And if the left cave didn't lead to the next town, then both Slowking would answer yes instead. So in short, after asking the question, go down the cave that they both would say no to. Riddle number 2. One day the local town decides to hold a mini contest. The rules are simple. There are 5 boxes, each containing a different berry. A cherry berry, a chesto berry, a pecha berry, a royster berry, and an asper berry. Each person has to guess which berry is in which box. A total of 150 people take part, and guess which berry they think is in each box. After all 150 people make their guesses, the boxes are opened and the berries are revealed. Overall, 10 people got none of the berries correctly, 34 people got only one of the berries correctly, 41 people got 2 of the berries correctly, and 42 people got 3 berries correctly. Knowing all of this, can you work out how many people guessed 4 berries correctly, and how many people guessed all 5 berries correctly? Now I'm guessing that there are going to be some of you who work this out pretty easily, if they didn't already know how the riddle works. For the rest of you, you probably figured out that there are 23 people remaining, however got stuck, and then thought, how are we supposed to work out exactly how many people guessed 4 berries correctly and 5 berries correctly without any additional information? Well then, prepare to kick yourself. You don't need any additional information. The answer is that all remaining 23 people guessed all 5 berries correctly, and there was no one who guessed exactly 4. This is because it's impossible for anyone to guess only 4 berries correctly. If we changed the riddle a bit and there was only 2 boxes instead of 5, it would have been a lot easier to figure out, since once they get 1 berry correctly, they'll automatically get the other, and the same would work for any number. With 5 berries, once the person has guessed 4 correctly, the remaining one will always be correct. Riddle number 3. After wandering through a cave for hours, and with no escape ropes or Pokémon that know dig, you become lost with no clue how to get out. Eventually, you come to an opening that doesn't lead to the way out, but instead leads to what looks like a lake inside the cave. Suddenly, 3 silhouettes of what look like Pokémon appear in front of you. Desperate for help, you ask them if they can help you get out of the cave. They tell you that they can help, but only if you can work out the identity of all 3 Pokémon, one being Azelf, one being Mesmerit, and one being Yuxi. You can ask up to 3 yes or no questions to one of the 3 Pokémon at a time. Seems simple enough. However, there are some catches. The first is that Azelf will always answer with the truth, Mesmerit will always answer with a lie, and Yuxi will always answer randomly between the truth and a lie. And if you ask a question that can't be answered with either yes or no, or you ask a question that isn't possible for them to answer, then they will refuse to answer the question. The second catch is that the Pokémon will only answer with the words ja and ka, one word meaning yes, and the other word meaning no. But you don't know which word means yes and which word means no. With all this information given to you, how can you correctly identify each Pokémon? This riddle is based on a logic puzzle that is literally called the hardest logic puzzle ever, which is a very fitting name. Not only do you not know if the answer to your question is the truth or a lie, but even then, you don't even know whether the answer to your question is yes or no. So how are you supposed to work anything out? Well, believe it or not, this riddle isn't just possible, but there are actually a couple of solutions to get around it. The most troubling Pokémon in this scenario is Yuxi, since its answers are randomly true or false, and you can't really get much information from something as unreliable as completely random answers. So we need to either identify which Pokémon is Yuxi first, or identify a Pokémon that definitely isn't Yuxi, and then use that Pokémon to identify who the other Pokémon are. So let's start. Now you might be thinking, how the hell are we supposed to work out which Pokémon is Yuxi in the first place? Well, to do that, we want to ask a question that will give a different response to Azelf and Mesmerit. So we should ask a question that only Yuxi can answer. Since Yuxi's answers are random between truth and lie, both Azelf and Mesmerit won't know if Yuxi will answer a question truthfully or falsely. So we should start by asking one Pokémon. If I asked Yuxi a question, would Yuxi lie? Azelf would not be able to answer this question truthfully, since Yuxi's answer could be either truth or a lie, and Mesmerit wouldn't be able to answer falsely for the same reason. Yuxi would be able to answer, and it doesn't matter what its answer would be, all we need is an answer. So after asking this question, if the Pokémon does answer, we know that Pokémon is Yuxi. If they don't answer, that Pokémon is either Azelf or Mesmerit, and then you ask the same question to another Pokémon. If they answer, it's Yuxi, and if they don't answer, then the Pokémon that you haven't asked a question to is Yuxi. Now that we know which Pokémon is Yuxi, it's time to work out which Pokémon is the liar, and which one is the truth teller. Here we have a very similar situation to the first riddle, except this time we don't know if the Pokémon's answers will be yes or no, but once we figure out one of these Pokémon, like the second riddle, we will also know who the third Pokémon is. So like the first riddle, we need to ask a question that Azelf would answer both differently to Mesmerit, and to know which word each Pokémon would answer with. Ask one of the Pokémon that isn't Yuxi. If I asked you if you were Mesmerit, would you say ja? If ja means yes, and you were talking to Azelf, it would reply with ka, but if ja meant no, Azelf would still reply with ka. If you were asking Mesmerit instead, and ja meant yes, it would reply with ja, and ja again if ja this time meant no. This question works very similarly to the question in the first riddle, and once we identify which Pokémon is Azelf or Mesmerit, we'll know who the remaining Pokémon is. Alternatively, when we ask the first question to one of the Pokémon, and they don't answer, instead of moving on to another Pokémon and asking the same question, because we know that this Pokémon we just asked isn't Yuxi, we can use our second question to work out straight away whether they are Azelf or Mesmerit, by using the question that we used to identify Azelf or Mesmerit previously. And once we figure out if they are the truth teller or a liar, you can get them to identify one other Pokémon, since you know if they're telling the truth or not, thus again identifying each Pokémon correctly, and making our way out of the cave. So I hope that all made sense. I apologise if it was a bit too hard to understand, so if by any chance you didn't fully understand the riddle, I've left links in the description to some of the sources that I used, and other riddles which will hopefully give you a better understanding. But if you did understand everything I said, then great! And if you already knew the answers to these riddles, well then, good for you. I hope you enjoyed anyway, and do please leave a like if you did. Subscribe for more Pokemon videos in the future, and until next time, thanks so much for watching.